Brandon here, Berserk Offroad. How many of you remember when I said I was going to run aluminum skids on my Jeep? If not, this is what I had to say about it.
I will absolutely be adding skids to this build. Now from the factory, this Gladiator has some pretty decent skids. It's got this thick steel skid plate under the gas tank. It's got a transfer case skid that's right now resting on my rump. But, and a front axle disconnect skid, but I will be upgrading my protection. Now, I don't need heavy duty, thick, strong steel skid plates that are built for smashing into rocks and making the terrain submit to where you want to go. No, I'm going with aluminum skids. I just need something to give me a little bit of gliding protection, so when I, kiss the rocks, I can keep sliding over them and keep going. Also, I need to keep weight down. I want to maximize my payload, and adding steel skid plates when I don't need them because I'm not doing aggressive crawling is overkill. So I'm going with aluminum skids. And I'm probably going to do full underbody protection, not just a belly pan skid that'll go right where my head is. It'll help cut down on just stupid things from happening. An example, yesterday when we were on the trail, the very first trail I went on, a branch about the diameter and size of a child's arm got lodged in between my drive shaft and my transmission cooling lines and just somehow staked its way. But anyway, had that, ripped out those lines, I would have had a very bad day. So adding skid plates will cut down on stupid things like that from happening.
And this is how it went.
If you keep going back, the rock's gonna go up and it might push you up. Does that make sense?
Is it on a skid plate? A big shiny one?
It's at the very, it's stuck on the front one, but it's right next to your exhaust pipe.
All right. It's sliding?
It's sliding, you're good now. The rock's up front now, you're good.
Now the oil pan skid, it goes from a cross member, it protects the transmission, there's an exhaust cross member, and then it goes up and it protects the oil pan, and then it mounts to two brackets that hang down from engine mounts. And I bent that skid plate up, and the brackets that go over the exhaust cross member actually dug into my transmission oil pan. And I couldn't bend the skid plate back, so I ended up donating it to the scrap heap. Now, how many of you have had a bad experience with a product or a company, and from that point on, swore off that product or company, and anytime someone brought it up, you just said, oh, that's horrible, never again? Well, I was going down that same path, and I invite you to revisit those feelings. Recently, some users had some videos about the new Artec skid plate system, and as well as some users on some forums, and I was starting to go down that path of sharing my bad experiences. But then Artec reached out and they actually said, we redesigned the skid plate. There's a new version, and they're going to warranty any issues with the old skid plate. And personally, I was actually attracted to that. I said, well, I was an idiot and abusive with those skids. I ended up wheeling harder than I thought I would, and I bent them because of my own disregard and lack of restraint. And so I decided to give Artec Industries another chance. And so I purchased their newer version of the oil pan skid plate to mount to my belly pan. All right, I've got the second generation of the oil pan transmission installed on my Jeep. If I actually had a lift, I'd had more room to show it to you, but hey, this is what I've got. Now, when I installed this, I did notice other differences with this skid plate than the first version. The first being, obviously right here, there is now a cover for the oil drain plug. Before, it was just an open hole. Now they have a nice cover that's bolted into place. But the primary feature of this skid plate is right here. There's actually more clearance for the exhaust crossmember. So right here is my exhaust crossmember. You likely have one too. And on the first version of this skid plate, the skid contacted my exhaust pipe and it was rubbing, making a lot of popping noises when I was turning. And Artec support told me, oh, just take a torch to the pipe and clamp it down. They said because only 5% of the Jeeps had this the certain crossmember that would contact, it wasn't worth their time to make the skid plate, clearance that 5% of those Jeeps or whatever. So yeah, so I pinched my exhaust crossmember to make clearance. But now with this one, you can see there's a lot more clearance right here. So had I got this skid plate to begin with, or had they just done it right in the first place, I wouldn't have had that issue. So now I've got a pre-clearanced exhaust crossmember. One thing that does concern me with this skid plate is over the crossmember is a bracket. And I get it. This is a piece of aluminum and it's kind of a lever, and if you put pressure on it, it'll bend and they don't want it to crumple. So they have these reinforcement brackets that go over the exhaust crossmember. Now, when I bent this one, the previous version, that bracket bent up into my transmission oil pan and actually gouged it. So if I bend this one, is that going to contact the same spot? And so now that means I am potentially running the risk of, if I bend this skid plate, I could put a hole in my transmission oil pan and my Jeep will bleed out into the trail in the middle of nowhere. So I am happy seeing my skid plate system is complete again. Looking at the rest of the belly pan system, looking down the underbelly of my Jeep, I can see a whole bunch of scratches and scarring and stuff where it's done its job, where I've slid over stuff, and besides a few dents in my catalytic converter and exhaust, things are looking pretty good. So I'm glad I have this protection so I could be sliding over rocks, and I'm glad I went with aluminum because it keeps the weight down so I can maximize my payload on my trips, because ultimately I want to keep the weight down on this rig. I'm anxious to see how this skid plate performs, and if I have any issues with it, absolutely, I'll give you a third update, or would that be second? Another update on these Artec skid plates bit. Ultimately, I wanted to give them a second chance. They said they redesigned it, and I didn't want to, go around with a sour attitude about it because I had one bad experience with it. On all my Jeeps, I've bent my oil pan and transmission skid plate. Even though they were steel, I still bent them. So I understand that this is a hard area to protect, and I just want to give them the benefit of the doubt and run the system again. And I wanted to share that with you guys, since initially I did give a positive thumbs up on this. So that's where I'm at. I've got my full skid system again, and I'm looking forward to getting back out there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the trail. Was I rolling? Oh, good.